Hello again, and welcome back to the presentation on the debate of truth versus justice. In this segment, I want to talk a little bit about amnesty and the offering of amnesty. Now, I think one thing that we can observe is that in a lot of post-conflict and post-regime situations, various types of amnesty or immunity are neither unknown nor rare. Sometimes amnesty is granted in advance, sometimes it is granted as a condition, sometimes there is a process, like in processes of lustration, of requesting amnesty or of offering something in exchange for amnesty. Sometimes amnesty is conditioned on a time period, that there is a period for prosecution, which will be followed by an amnesty. What all amnesties involve are something that sounds like it ought to be unacceptable to most people in most environments, and that is the fact that some violators are shielded from prosecution, are shielded from consequences for their violations. Why are they shielded? Generally, they are shielded in the service of what is thought of being a larger or an overwhelming goal. When we talk about these goals, then we probably need to understand that these political decisions are never the result of a pure discussion of moral philosophy or principle or something like that. That is, amnesty is often justified on moral grounds or on ethical grounds, but it is a political act. So amnesty in principle probably needs to be distinguished from amnesty in practice. Amnesty in practice is something other than a moral or ethical or universalistic decision, and more an object of speculative and strategic positioning, something that politicians do in order to achieve a practical rather than a moral goal. What are some of the practical goals? Well, one of the practical goals is to acquire information. That is, amnesty might be a necessity for gathering information, and information might be unavailable without it. That is to say, that a hypothesis is made that people will be more willing to provide information if they do not believe that they are likely to suffer consequences on the basis of the information that they provided. So as a practical matter, often amnesty is seen as a way of making information available. There is another practical condition of amnesty, and that is the belief or an assessment that is made that there is a greater risk to the society from the reemergence of conflict than there is a risk from the possibility of impunity. Which risk is greater? Well, the answer might depend on whether you're more concerned with long-term effects, like reconciliation, if that's envisioned, or short-term effects, like the satisfaction of grievances, some form of closing the books. What is interesting in this is that there does seem to be a consensus around the necessity of truth being told, around the necessity for people to make honest accounts. So again, Antje Krog tells the story of a group of young people who were out in a bar drinking and discussing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and its process for amnesty. And they go off, they decide to go, they borrow a desk and a computer from a real estate agency that is next door to the bar, and they write an application that they then submit to the police asking for amnesty for the apathy that they felt at the time that the crisis was going on. That is, they were talking about the Truth and Reconciliation. They felt guilty for not having been actively engaged during the time that crimes were being committed. And they thought that if they did not need to be punished for this, that at least they should request some kind of forgiveness. Now, it's an interesting story. It's one of my favorite stories from Antje Krog. I think that it also highlights one of the dimensions of amnesty that is especially problematic. That is, it introduces a new problem because it seems to have the implication that requesting amnesty will be equated with recognizing guilt. Another thing that we can say about amnesty is that very often amnesties are applied strategically. That is to say, that some kind of show is made of a large public investigation or trial that will identify top officials, heads of the regime or of the military or police, and their responsibility, to be followed by an amnesty that is directed toward lower ranking officials, toward low ranking military officers, police officers, agents, and so on, with the idea being that it is enough to show the responsibility of the institution, but that attempts to prosecute all of the people involved in the institution are likely to be problematic, are likely to create this never ending story that will lead to uncertainty and dispute. Uh, what we can say then is that there is, at least potentially, a positive argument that is made for amnesty. And the positive argument runs like this: that amnesty has the potential of achieving goals that prosecution cannot achieve. The goal of collecting information, the goal of correcting imbalances and inequalities in the social environment, and the goal of restoring relationships and healing, what tends to fall under the category of reconciliation, this broad and very difficult label of reconciliation. And in that sense, amnesty is often regarded as contributing more to restorative justice than to retributive justice. One of the problems, of course, here falls particularly under this category of correcting imbalances, because to the degree that amnesties might be successful in getting a more complete truth told, they are not often successful in addressing conditions that are not directly a part of violations that were committed, that are not directly a part of violence and crimes, such as social inequality. We'll address that a bit in the next segment when we talk, once again, we also talked about this a bit last week, about truth commissions.